Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, our series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is one of India's foremost preeminent scientists. He's been described as patentkar by a business magazine as a catalyst for change. He heads and leads perhaps the world's largest chain of industrial research organizations. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Mashelkar. Dr. Mashelkar, welcome. This has been an eventful year for you. You've got the Padma Bhushan. You've recently come back from South Africa with an honorary PhD from Pretoria University, who earlier honored Nelson Mandela. From very sort of humble beginnings, I've been reading the story where it was a question mark whether you had 3 paise for the answer sheets to go and write your Saturday exam in school. You sit here as head of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in India. What has this done for you as an act of faith?
Well, I personally believe that my faith in this gracious society, which gave me access to education and gave me an opportunity, has been reinstated, so as to say. Because, you know, many times we feel, will India make it, will things ever change? So I always remind myself, someone like me could have been in a dustbin, but I'm sitting in front of you this morning, and it is entirely because of these opportunities that were given to me. So given an opportunity, I think India can make it, 1 billion Indians can make it.
You have been involved in very seminal ways in the process of, shall we say, the restructuring of India and in managing India's scientific and industrial research base. And I think one of the great miracles of, well, shall I describe it as public sector management, you were able to get business worth more than 100 crores for what is essentially a government-run managed research institution. What have been the secrets of your success of being able to mobilize, catalyze what is traditionally associated, you know, a system which is, well, shall we say, at the very least inefficient?
Well, as far as the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, to which you are referring to, yes, we are a chain of 40 laboratories. We are close to 23,000 people. We are the largest chain of publicly funded R&D institutions. And when we were founded, there was a simple principle on the basis of which we were founded. And it was to advance knowledge and use it for the good of the people. And I believe that that latter part of it, use it for the good of the people, would mean creating economic wealth, creating social good, was extraordinarily important. And to imbibe that particular spirit back was my major endeavor when I took over as the Director General of CSR. Of course, my predecessors had provided a tremendous platform on the basis of which I could build further. But the issue now was of a different kind. Context always decides the content. We had worked in a contextual framework before 1991, pre-liberalized era, where huge tariff barriers had protected our industry. So you could produce gums which did not stick, people bought them. You produce plugs which did not fit, people bought them, and so on and so forth. There was no urge on innovation. Whereas now, with opening up, severe competition, the other products coming in, it became extremely important that if India had to be protected, then we had to be truly innovative. That's number one. Number two, this huge enterprise that was created by public funding, by poor taxpayers' money, had to give returns to the country. And therefore, it was not research just for fun and joy, but looking at converting research into business, creating wealth out of knowledge to the process of innovation, that became the key. And that is something that I took on headlong when I took on.
And you also very exceptionally for a government organization defined targets and goals that you would achieve in the year 2003, I think it was. And I was reading a figure that you would aspire to 500 international patents, and you've already crossed 300 something.
I still remember when I made that first presentation, one of the senior scientists told me, don't put it as 2003, sorry, but put it as 2010. And I said no, let it be this, because let me be judged before I retire rather than after retirement. That was one. The second important point was that we set quantitative targets, basically, because there is something beautiful about numbers. You first have the triumph of knowledge over empiricism, or making some general comments that from a good organization will become very good. So putting those numbers tied us down. And number three, the entire CSIR had something to look forward to, because each individual laboratory started setting up their own vision. Like NCL would say NCL 2001, and CRRI would say CRRI 2001. So there was a convergence of goals and objectives. Yeah.
Now, as sort of CEO of CSIR Incorporated, what were some of the sort of techniques and devices, strategies that you used to empower the same scientists to be motivated, to be empowered, to be galvanized? Obviously a lesson many public sector institutions could learn.
Yeah, number of them. The first was we talked about team CSIR, basically, because as I said, 40 laboratories were behaving like 40 laboratories. So we set up major programs where the skills of different laboratories could be synergized, because individually they were subcritical, together they were a huge powerhouse, so as to say. That was the first step we took. Secondly, we started creating, let us say, methods of empowerment. In a sense, I wanted Delhi to become irrelevant, me to become irrelevant, and the laboratories, which are really the places where the work gets done, empowered. So I started shifting power, basically, to the directors and sort of down. That was the second. The third was, what would be the motivation for individual scientists as well as institutions to go out and work hard for industry? I mean, we are setting up, let us say, a fermentation plant in Saharanpur, in Uttar Pradesh, with 40 degrees centigrade temperature, scientists sweating out in the open. They might as well sit in an air-conditioned room on a PC and do their work. So how do you motivate them? There were several things that we did. One of them was, we said any earning that you have by the research contracts, the surplus you would be able to keep for yourself. And that doesn't have to come back to Delhi. And not only that, you will carry it over from year to year. And not only that, you will have the freedom to use it the way you like for a purpose of development. Now, that did a number of things. What is a surplus? Surplus is price minus cost. Now, in order to increase the surplus, they have to reduce the cost. How do you reduce the cost? By increasing efficiency. Previously, if a project came, they would say 9 people, doesn't matter. Now they would say, why 9? Why not 3? The rest 6 can be used. So efficiency started going up. And in order to increase the price, market will not pay you unless you have higher content of knowledge, innovation, you create a competitive product. That had a whole range of effect. Today, CSIR has a reserve of something like 250 crore, by the way. National Chemical Laboratory, for example, which I was heading, I find they have reserve of 25 crore. Last year, my budgetary support to them was 16 crore. So we are rapidly moving towards this system. That was one. Secondly, we created individual incentives also. If science is going to be converted into technology, technology into business, business into wealth, then part of that wealth should come back to the scientists. So we created incentives of that time. So I would imagine that there are a whole range of things. There is always a scientist in an entrepreneur in a scientist. I like the word technopreneur in general. We try to evoke that route to Lakshmi through Saraswati.
One of your sort of major contributions, apart from managing CSIR, has been the whole issue of patents and property rights, and facilitating, encouraging, empowering Indian scientists in the Indian community, both business and scientific, to go in for these patents. How important has this issue been for India?
Extraordinarily important. One recollects 1898, Sir J.C. Bose, discoverer of coherer, which was the essence of wireless, basically. When people went to him and said, patent it, he said no. He couldn't be persuaded. It was Marconi who picked it up, patented, and so on. Today, if you ask a schoolboy who discovered wireless, It is Marconi. He got the Nobel Prizes. He had the patents and so on. That was 1898. 1998, we began our fight for Basmati. Okay, because we are not protected geographical indications. So from 1898 to 1998, it's a travel from Bose to Basmati, basically. And I do believe that the new world, where when we talk about the new century as the century of knowledge and converting knowledge into wealth is going to be so crucial. It is only knowledge that is protectable and protected that can create wealth. I think we have to understand that. Secondly, the traditional knowledge in which India is so rich. One found that again wrong patents were being given on that, like
you led the turmeric
battle, and I'll sort of come back to that. And that was once again because of our naivety, and therefore it became a crucial issue. But I'll tell you where the real change came. I began this particular campaign in 1989. The beginning was a very interesting one. In 1989, I had a serious problem. Context decides the content. What was the context? The context was an Indian industry which was totally protected. So therefore, any time we did anything ahead of the rest of the world, we went to them, they would say, but have they done it? And therefore, my people were perennially doing reverse engineering, copying, so as to say. And we would have remained like that. Now, how do you change the content if you don't change the context? And I could, 89 I'm talking about, you know. So I said, we'll go global. We'll provide R&D technology services worldwide. In fact, General Electric, who opened their R&D center yesterday here, it began with a partnership of NCL, by the way. It's their largest R&D center. They were one of our first partners. And there it became obvious that in 49 years of history of such a great laboratory, a national chemical laboratory, we did not have a single US patent, zero. Now, if I'm going to export knowledge to the rest of the world, the first thing they will ask is this knowledge protected? They are so scared of infringement. And that is where this slogan about not just publish or perish, but patent, publish and prosper. You should publish, that's extremely important, but you should patent it first, actually began. I do believe now there is a tremendous awareness that has come in the universities, in IITs, in industry, and things will possibly change much faster than we believe.
But isn't it sort of exceptionally difficult and complex in terms of access to processes, access to resources for an engineer or a scientist in India to actually go out and get an international patent?
Well, I'll put it to you like this. I think that's a very, very good comment in the question. It so turns out, as a matter of fact, that say typically for US, you would require 1.5 lakh of rupees or so, roughly, to register a patent, and then to maintain it will require further sort of money. On the other hand, some innovations are so invaluable that it is worth investing in that. CSR today, for instance, last year we had close to 400 odd patents, and we filed 197 patents abroad, so obviously it has cost us that much. But on the other hand, the returns are also commensurate. That's number one. Number two is that CSR can afford it, can others afford it, because we earn, and today we are 1,000 crore plus organization. What government has done is that it is facilitating that. Like for instance, Department of Science and Technology, they have a patent facilitation cell which provides financial assistance. My own NRDC provides financial assistance, and there are many organizations like this Technopreneurs Promotion Program that offers financial assistance. We need to widely advertise that such financial assistance is available.
You know, you have been involved in developing and in sort of international patent regimes, and yet you talk about a US patent or an Indian patent. Why can't there be an international patent in that sense? Why do we have to go to the United States in particular to get our discoveries and research patented?
Well, it so turns out that when it comes to intellectual property, each country has its own, let us say, territorial restrictions and on the flow of intellectual capital in and out, and therefore there are nothing like common patents. Like for instance, US has certain rules by which it operates, and we don't operate by those rules. But there is certain commonality that is now being established thanks to TRIPS, so that there will be some sort of uniform, let us say, strategy. Different countries will have different problems. Like for instance, India. For us, it is extremely important to protect traditional knowledge. A lot of traditional knowledge is not written, it is oral. And therefore, for instance, Indian Patent Act, the new one that is getting enacted now, says that we will also accept oral evidence, essentially. But the other countries do not do so. So that flexibility resides with each country.
So in a sense that when someone goes and you let this, the battle, the struggle on the patent of turmeric, so it sort of means that we just have to sort of sit back here, be vigilant of every single patent that someone initiates in any country abroad, should it infringe on our traditional wisdom?
Okay.
Is that what it's tantamount to?
Let's get back into the turmeric case, just for a moment. What was the turmeric case? The wound healing properties of turmeric have been known in India for centuries, and suddenly one found this patent. And we decided, CSR decided, that we'll challenge it, basically. When we challenged it, we had to produce evidence that it was our knowledge. Now we produced all sorts of evidence, including translations of Sanskrit texts and so on and so forth, etc. And it was all admitted. It was not known at that time whether it would be admitted. Winning that was a small step, but a very important landmark. That excited others. For example, just November last year, there was another patent on what is called as ayahuasca, which was something that belonged to 400 tribes in Amazon. Taking inspiration from that, they said wrong patent was given, and then neem has been, and so on and so forth. Now, why all these patents get given? You know, when I was the chairman of the World Intellectual Property Organization's SCIT committee, Standing Committee on Information Technology, I had a chance to interact with the 171 member nations, particularly with the United States Patent Office. And their problem, they explained to me, was the following. They say we get 500,000 patent applications every year. We sit on the computer terminal. Electronic database is the only thing that we can go through. We push turmeric powder, wound healing, see what comes on the screen. Nothing comes on the screen, because that knowledge is embedded either here or buried in books. So can we create non-patent databases? Now that is something we moved in WIPO. And I'm very proud to say India is taking the lead. Mrs. Shailaja Chandra, ISM Secretary, she took an initiative. There was a task force that was formed, a real Team India effort. A paper is going before the cabinet now, to create what you might like to call as a traditional knowledge digital library, where we take all this knowledge, which is either in our heads or buried somewhere, etc., convert it and make it accessible to the rest of the world, which will give us our rights. It will also do the following. We will know what we have. Today we don't even know what we have. And I believe that this movement now will catch on with Latin America, Indonesia, China, etc., etc. And it will do a lot of good. But I can go further than that. When I talk about digital library, you know, digital medium has power, not only in terms of text, but sound as well as image. And therefore, these artistic creations, whether it is a folklore, whether it is a craft, or whatever, etc., can also be captured gradually in these. And there is a wealth that can be created. Today, craftbridge.com portal, if you visit, you will find the craft of a Gujarat village is on that portal, and an American is able to access it, decide the design, the weave and the fabric, and the Gujarat village is sort of getting benefited. So this vast richness of India can be captured through this. But let me come back to the bottom line. The bottom line is, although turmeric was a small step, it has meant a very giant leap. And this step from turmeric to TKDL, in my judgment, has given a completely different rationale to the traditional.
Of course, an important aspect of that was that here was someone who was also validating scientifically the wound healing properties of turmeric. So it wasn't just traditional wisdom. To what degree are we making efforts to sort of scientifically, empirically, to the degree that these things can be validated?
As a matter of fact, I was just writing my convocation address this morning for Anna University, and this is precisely the point I'm trying to make. You know, the great thing is that we are always seeking problems, scientific problems, from the Western world. We have launched within CSR a 20 laboratory network program on bioactives. What we are doing is that we are holding hand, let us say, with our past. Like for instance, Arya Vaidyashala, Kottakkal, basically, you know. It's a river of knowledge which has flown for centuries. We are modern CSR, we have forged linkages. And looking at the empirical wisdom that they have been using, if I may use that word, we are validating it scientifically. And believe me, the kind of breakthroughs that we are getting, I mean, I should not be talking about these now because we need to validate them, basically, etc., are unbelievable. We are getting leads which are unparalleled. Our major problem has been that scientists have remained here, and the practitioners of the traditional wisdom have remained here. Now they are beginning to come together.
You know, you're one of the, I think, 35 odd Indian scientists and engineers who've been members of the Fellow who've been a Fellow of the Royal Society in London. You're a distinguished scientist. Why is it that we have ordinarily considered the scientific temper in some ways being antithetical to the Indian mindset?
I'm also very surprised by that, very frankly, and I worry about it. Frankly, you know, when people say emergence of information society, India is not an information society, I dispute that. Somebody in the morning gets up and spreads a rumor that Ganpati or Lord Ganesh is drinking milk. Within 2 hours, not only entire India knows it, people, Indians in Canada and England and everybody knows it. That's not bad. So information, we are an information society in some way. But what happens after that, you know, that blind trust, which is the lack of scientific temper, is something that I'm really puzzled about. Because the people who went after that and tried to, believing that, had cues, included doctorates and well-educated people. So it really sort of beats me. But I must say that if 21st century is century of knowledge, and if India wants to be a knowledge superpower, it's not just education alone, but scientific temper that is going to be extremely important for us. And that has to be built right from childhood. The educational system, the entire process of learning, I think has to be revamped.
I was also looking at the role that scientific research might play in this area. You know, there's been work done on more efficient bullock carts. You know, there was a newspaper item the other day of more efficient cycle rickshaws. You know, technology that's more appropriate, scientific knowledge that's more relevant to that other India.
Yes, that's an extremely important issue. Just as I talked about building a bridge between the old and the new, similarly, that bridge between the knowledge that you are now referring to and the properly generated scientific knowledge is extremely important. Again, we have taken a very interesting initiative. The government of India has set up what is called the National Innovation Foundation, and this has to do with grassroots innovation. You know, Anil Gupta from IIM Ahmedabad has been championing this for a long time. So there is a board now that has been formed. I happen to be its chairman. What are we trying to do? We are saying that new ideas don't necessarily get generated in the laboratories. People wearing white coats sitting across computer terminals. They get generated in farms, in streets, housewives, and so on and so forth. Can we give it an expression? Okay. So what we are now doing is that we are trying to create a national register of innovations. Just give you an example. For instance, in the Gujarat village, one finds that people have come out with a backfilling method, you know, for nurseries, for example, and it does that backfilling 5 times faster. It's a simple device which has been worked out by somebody who is practically semi-literate or illiterate. Okay. If it is 5 times faster, it can give 5 times more income because number of bags filled matter. Now, why should it remain in Gujarat? It should be used in Bihar, Tamil Nadu, everywhere, basically. So we are creating such national register of innovation and trying to sort of basically percolate it.
You know, we started with the act of faith in a sense that places you at the helm of industrial scientific establishment in India. You know, Einstein is famous for the quotation about infinity and his experience of God. And as a scientist, do you have a faith that is beyond the empirical, beyond the reasoning, beyond the logical?
I think so. I do believe. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated Ganesh Chaturthi in my home. I believe in Lord Ganesha, for example. It empowers me. I mean, I don't know, that is something which is invisible, intangible, which I cannot describe, but I draw inspiration from it.
Dr. Mashelkar, thank you very much.